Croatia, abundant in natural beauties, may rightly be listed among the most attractive regions of the Mediterranean. The capital city is Zagreb, with a population of 1 million. The city was founded in 1094 by King Saint Ladislaus. The town was established directly next to the Capitol. It can still be considered the center of the city. Tomislav, the first Croatian king, ruled in the early Middle Ages. His equestrian statue stands on the square named after him. Walking around the downtown area, we can encounter statues of some more historic personalities. August Senior, Klavio Klovic, Miklos Jurisic, and the stone figure of Ban Jelačić. Conflicts resulting in the war between the independent Kaptol and Gradec were halted by the attack of the Turks, when the residents pulled together to fortify the city walls. Zagreb reattained its title as the capital only after the passing of the Turkish. But the legal union of the city parts had to wait until 1850. The city's development started picking up in the age of the Austro-Hungarian monarchy. This is when the main railway station was built, together with the National Theatre and the Academy. The style of the buildings of the time shows a striking resemblance to buildings in Vienna and Budapest. The downtown area, closed to motor vehicle traffic, is abundant in green areas and flowering parks. This is where the nicest shopping street of the city, the Ulica, begins. The statue of Jelačić is the artwork of Anton Fernkorn, the famous sculptor of Vienna. On Jelačić Square, the most important tram lines meet, and local people feel that this is the real heart of the city. There's also a small fountain collecting the water of the Mandusevac spring. Beyond the square rises St. Stephen's Cathedral, built together with the palace of the Archbishop and the seminary. In the tomb of the church, well-known historic figures are buried, such as Zrinis and Frangipanis. The City History Museum was established in the Opatitska Street in the building of an old monastery. St. Mark's Square is the center of public life in Zagreb. In front of Ban's Palace at weekends and on holidays, the changing of the guard entertains the tourists. The simple building of the Croatian Parliament stands opposite. Nearby is a memorial exhibition of the sculptor Ivan Mestrovic. We can also see the cannon of the Tower of Lotrak, which used to signal noon, and its bell, which signaled night when the guard closed the gates of the city. A beautiful view opens up to the southern part of the city from the top of the tower. The quaint little houses were rescued by reconstruction from under modern houses that had been built on top of them earlier. Osijek is the area between the rivers Drava and Sava, thus the biggest city of Slavonia. The first settlement here was built by the Celts. The Romans integrated their city into the empire under the name Mursa. The walls of the city were built under the rule of Emperor Hadrian. In 1526, the Turkish gathering started from here against Mohacs. In 1664, Miklos Zrinji burned the bridge of the city, which was of strategic importance. The imperial troops recaptured Osijek 23 years later and built the fortress that still can be seen today on the site of its medieval castle. Most of the sites of the city are on the bank of the river Drava. The Austrian fortress and the old town are in the Baroque style, while the area of Europe Avenue is a quarter done in Art Nouveau. The 90-meter tower of the St. Peter and Paul Cathedral is the second highest in the country. The 40 glass windows of the imposing building, made of red brick, are the work of Austrian artist Edward Hauser. The Crow's Nest Ethnographic Museum represents the life of wealthier peasants and farmers from the late 18th and early 19th centuries. The original buildings were furnished with original furniture. Due to this, the interiors breathe the air of contemporary atmosphere of the time. Due to the fascist cruelties of World War II, opposition developed and then took on more organized forms. What were sparse partisan activities in the beginning became frontal war after the capitulation of Italy. After the end of the war, as a reward for his brave struggle, the partisan leader, Marshal Josip Broz Tito, was elected president of the country. In Croatia, Tito, the soldier and politician, is still very highly respected today. His mansion around Osijek is a memorial museum today. The National Park of Plitvice Lakes is one of the most impressive natural sights of not only Croatia, but all of Europe. In the romantic 20,000-hectare area, the waters of 3 rivers converge, creating lakes, rapids, caves, and waterfalls. The water flows from one terraced lake to another, stretching 8 kilometers, falling 133 meters in all. In the area of the park, the tourist center is on the shore of Lake Kozniak, with information office and eateries. The entrance fee includes the fare of the boat crossing the lake and the bus fare. After cruising for a quarter of an hour, we reach the highest situated area of the region. It's a must to go on a 3-hour walk from here, then to return to the entrance by panoramic electronic bus. We can choose from hiking routes of different lengths. The national park was opened in 1949, and 30 years later, it was declared a part of the World Heritage by UNESCO. For tourists heading to the Dalmatian coast, it's worth planning their itinerary so that they can spend at least a full day at the lakes of Plitvice. The park has 2 entrances. 3 hotels can be found at entrance number 2, and only a few kilometers further, 2 well-equipped campsites offer their services. In the nearby villages, accommodation is provided in private houses, where meals are often included. At entrance number 1, a restaurant, currency exchange office, and gift shop can be found. In the valley between the Kapela and Pljesevica mountains, the combined waters of the Matica, Rječica, and Plitvice rivers have formed a basin. Water has dissolved the limestone, creating unique rock formations and caves. The highest situated lake is the 40-meter deep Proskansko. 6 smaller lakes also belong to the group. Between them, the water flows through rapids and lost rivers. The middle lake system includes 4 large, crystal-clear trout lakes. The biggest of the lakes is the 46-meter deep Kozniak. Most tourist routes pass little wooden bridges built on stilts. These are useful from both the aspect of tourists and nature, and the use of natural materials doesn't disturb the harmony of the park either. The paths sometimes lead up to a panoramic spot or a more interesting cave, but you can also choose other paths. However, shutterbugs should not miss taking photographs of the landscape from the top of any of the panoramic mountaintops. The romantic landscape inspired filmmakers also. Many adventure movies have been filmed here, mostly Indian stories starring Gojko Mitic. Many animals live in the park, However, except for trout and some birds, we cannot really encounter them. They prefer to hide in the forests totaling 15,000 hectares. The biggest and most spectacular waterfall of Plitvice is the 78-meter-high Veliki Slap. In the 60s, hundreds of young people from Yugoslavia came to this place to get married. This lovely custom has sadly gone out of fashion. We can get the best view of the waterfall from the walking path of entrance number 1. Rovinj was once a little fishing village under the rule of the Venetian Republic. Besides fishermen, famous sailors, seamen, moreover, pirates also lived here. The little town is also famous for the stones carried from here to the Doge's Palace on the Venetian St. Mark's Square. The clock tower and the triumphal arch-like gate is still decorated by the coat of arms of Venice, the winged lion. Uphill, downhill, winding narrow alleys, passages, and small streets constitute the old town, which can be approached through 7 gates. Of these, 3 stand in the harbor. The tall houses and the narrow streets provide protection from the scorching sun, and laundry, of course, is not kept in the bathrooms to dry. Intimate archaic houses climb up the Monte Rosso hill. Above them sits enthroned the biggest Baroque church of Istria, St. Euphemia Parish, built in the 1700s. Its 60-meter-high bell tower was designed after the Campanile of Venice. On top, there's a statue of the saint for which it was named, which rotates around its axis, indicating the direction of the wind for sailors. Behind the altar stands the stone coffin of St. Euphemia, who died as a martyr under the rule of Diocletian. According to legend, the Virgin, who held on to her Christian faith until the end, was cast in front of lions, but the beasts submitted to her. Her persecutors executed her then. The frescoes of the churches depict these scenes and the miraculous arrival of the stone sarcophagus from Venice over the sea. As homage to the saint, every autumn a series of festivals is organized, with fine arts exhibitions and a series of classical music performances. On the cobblestone streets of the old town, we can walk down to the harbor, where the bustling and colorful sight of fishing boats, sailing boats, yachts, and motorboats awaits us, something we can never tire of. Lots of creatures of the sea are sold on small boats: clams, corals, snails, crabs, all processed into gifts. The streets surrounding the harbor not only make for pleasant evening walks. We can also have lunch, coffee, or ice cream under the umbrellas of the espresso bars and restaurants. A channel stretched in place of the former main square, castle walls and towers protected the city, which became a peninsula only in the 17th century, when the channel was filled in. Many cruises depart from the harbor of Rovinj. The fjord of Limski is one of the spectacles of Istria. Let's take a look at Pirate Cave, which was the hiding place of sea robbers. Today, it's a tourist attraction and the site of many adventure film shootings. The fjord is famous all around Croatia for its oyster farms. The fjord, lying between Rovinj and Vrsar, is nothing more than a 600-meter wide, 30-meter deep, 12-kilometer long scenic bay that was deepened by a lost river and flooded by the sea. Its spectacular green water can be attributed to the mixing of fresh and salt water. Vrsar, with only 1,600 residents, was also a fishing village once. It's a romantic, sun-kissed, characteristic settlement of the Adriatic. The city wall can only be seen in parts today. Some sections of it were built in the facade of the houses in the course of development. From the harbor, steep medieval streets lead up to the old town, where a wonderful view opens up to the large rocks remaining from the old stone mine, the harbor, and the islands. From here, we can best see the countless islands of various sizes, among which there are rocky and grassy, inhabited and uninhabited, but for sunbathers and swimmers arriving by boat, all are equally lovely. The crown of the old town is the church with its Venetian-style tower built in the 12th century. Behind it, there's the holiday home of the bishops of Poritz. Poreč is an intimate city abundant in monuments, with a great history and significant tourism. Open-air market is held all season long on the promenade, where street musicians and puppeteers entertain the vacationers in the evenings. The Renaissance towers standing behind the port and the arcade building of the city hall are from Venetian times. The Old Town shows a unified image, in spite of the fact that besides Venetian-style buildings, we can find a number of Gothic, Baroque, and Renaissance houses. The Basilica, part of the UNESCO World Heritage, named after Saint Euphrasia, was built on the foundation of a Paleo-Christian prayer house. In the 5th century, it was developed into a 3-nave basilica. It was made world-famous primarily by its Byzantine mosaics. The 3 naves of the basilica are separated by Corinthian pillars, its center dominated by the open atrium. The mosaic of the walls of the sanctuary depicts scenes from the life of Saint Maurus. In the floor, the remains of the mosaics of the old basilica can be found. The wall of the atrium is decorated with embossments and carvings. The frescoes and paintings are from the early Middle Ages. The roads running across the peninsula follow the line of Roman roads. Parts of these still incorporate the stones of these old roads, worn as smooth as glass. On the coast of the Adriatic, abundant in fish, seafood is tremendously popular. The small giritse, fried in oil, the somewhat bigger sardines, and tasty mackerels are popular. The most common preparation method is roasting over coals or grilling. Meat is prepared similarly: cevapcica, rajsnica, and pljeskavica. The typical side dish is a pepper sauce mixed with onion called Hvar. The city of Pula was built on the tip of the Istrian Peninsula, which is the industrial, economic, and trade center of the region. It has a cargo harbor and an airport. On its 8 hills, the Romans established a city by the name of Pola Polentia Herculania. In its heyday, the size of the population was close to that of today. This is when the amphitheatre was built, stunning in size and impressive even in ruins, for the sake of which tens of thousands of tourists visit Pula. The highest wall of the 3-story building, each story with 72 arcades, is 30 meters. Its ground plan is elliptic, and it was built to hold nearly 30,000 people. In its arena, gladiator and animal fights were held. The amphitheater once stood directly on the coast, but when the harbor was built, the buildup of embankments moved it further inland. The church of the Franciscans, built in 1314, looks down to the amphitheatre from a hill. In the course of its stormy history, for 120 years it was a military depot. Today it shines in its old glory again. Its peculiarity is that it has a pulpit facing the street. In the place of the old Forum stands the Temple of Augustus with its Corinthian colonnade. The shrine, built in the 1st century, was a grain elevator for a long time. Nowadays, an antique statue exhibition can be found in it. The road to the Archaeological Museum and the theater, where performances are still given, leads through the triumphal gate of Sergius. Rabatz, the busy tourist paradise, can be approached through the city of Labine, built on a mountain. New hotels and villas are being built at an amazing pace on the limestone hills overgrown with evergreens. The bay is equally popular with sailors, surfers, water skiers, and swimmers. From its promenade and from the terraces of its restaurants, we can enjoy the sight of white boats swerving on the emerald green water. On its beaches, thousands of tourists enjoy the sunshine and the caressing water of the Adriatic. It's good to know that the small cat sharks living here are harmless to humans. However, because of sea urchins, wearing plastic sandals is recommended. In the clear water, we can see a crowd of sea animals. We can take diving goggles along, but it's also possible to buy them on the spot. Those who would like to dive deeper can participate in diving training programs or tours of the bigger coastal cities. Individual divers are given a permit by the harbor authorities. It's also possible to rent or buy equipment. On the beaches, topless sunbathing is allowed, and there are also a lot of nudist beaches, which are separate from the others. Opatija, the former Abbazia, still preserves something from the atmosphere of the holiday resorts of the monarchy and the qualities of the French Riviera, as if it were the mixture of Monte Carlo and Karlovy Vár. In the middle of the 1800s, a wealthy merchant of Fiume had a villa built here for his wife. Villa Angelina was then followed by Villa Janet, Villa Madonna, and the rest. And the first hotels were built: the Bellevue, the Astoria, the Millennium, and the Imperial. Abbazia became increasingly trendier with rich people. This is where Franz Josef dallied with Catherine Schratt. Other ruling aristocrats also spent a lot of time here, and it was a popular place of such famous artists as the dancer Isadora Duncan, but also Puccini, Chekhov, Imre Kálmán, or Ferenc Lehár. The 1,400-meter-high Utska mountain, on the slope of which the city was built, provides an exceptionally pleasant climate. In the winter, it keeps cold winds away, while in summer it eases the heat with a fresh breeze. These conditions make the city not only a holiday resort, but also a climatic medicinal resort, which is also known for its sanatoriums, primarily effective in the treatment of rheumatism and asthma. In the interest of boosting the winter season, balls are held not only around Christmas time and New Year's Eve, but they also organize a carnival in January, which lasts a whole month and is abundant in cultural events. The coastal settlements are famous for the laces made here, which are sold in many places on the streets. The uniform architectural style of Opatija, its atmosphere which is different from that of other Istrian cities, its elegance, its botanical gardens, its promenade on the beach, its hotels and cafes attract visitors from far away. Rijeka is the third largest city on the coast. It lies in the northern part of the Hvar Bay, embraced by mountains. It was the only significant sea harbor of the Austro-Hungarian monarchy, and here are the headquarters of the biggest ship insurance company of the world, Lloyd's. The style of the empire and secession buildings makes the city similar to Vienna or Budapest, but this atmosphere is enhanced by the beach and the palm trees, which add some southern flavors. The long-stretching main street of the city starts from the harbor, following the line of the old city wall. The pedestrian zone is known for its elegant shops, street cafes, and intimate little restaurants. Its highlight is the city gate with the clock tower, which is decorated with the coat of arms of Fiume, ornate with eagle and crown, its baroque statues depicting Leopold I and Charles IV. Crikvenica has practically grown together with the neighboring Dramai and Salce. In 1412, the owner of the region, the Frangipani family, established a monastery here. The city built around it was named after the old church. The buildings of Crikvenica, with its imperial and royal atmosphere, made it similar to Bad Ischl, with the difference that here the number of sunny hours a year exceeds 2,500, and the climate is pleasantly mild even in winter. Along the nicely landscaped promenade, starting from the harbor, swimming is possible in several places. The sand carried here by the river is replaced from time to time, so it's always clean. The climate is mild even in winter. The hotels, the sanatoriums, and the covered swimming pools attract the anemic and recovering patients from all over Europe and those who struggle with problems of the nervous system. The cityscape of Zadar is made unique by the long-stretching sea bay, on the dry land side of which the new city part is situated, while opposite to it, on a small peninsula, the old town may be found, crowded with monuments. The bay is spanned by a footbridge opposite to the city gate. Across from the flower and vegetable market, the cafe is a favorite meeting point of locals, where they can enjoy a chat. To the simple solidness of the St. Chrysosthenes Church from Roman times, the elegant row of pillars of the facade shows a sharp contrast. The main altars and frescoes are from the 13th century. It isn't advisable to take a walking tour in the middle of the day. At such times, we can appreciate the cool shade of precious cultural and historical buildings even more than the buildings themselves. Late afternoons are more suitable for longer sightseeing tours. The residents of Zadar also swarm out to the streets after the siesta, not to return until late in the evening. There's a lot to see. The Renaissance building of the city loggia was designed by Samicelli in 1565. The Baroque clock tower was built on it in the 18th century. Around Trogir, we can find several elegant medieval palaces. It's worth seeing the building of the St. Francis Monastery, the icon collection of the St. Elias Church, the Palace of the Archbishop, the Archaeological Museum, the famous silver coffin of St. Simon, the Roman Shrine, and the National Museum of Zadar, exhibiting the different periods of the city. The medieval palaces, the Ghirardini and the Grisogono, are impressive. The fortress-like building of the St. Donatus Church forms a complex with the seminary, the dome, and the palace of the Archbishop. A lot of stones from Roman times were used during its construction. The Corinthian pillar, which used to be a pillory in the Middle Ages, stands on the Roman Forum. The Forum surfaced after the bombing of World War II. The classicist palace of the city headquarters stands on the square of the Five Wells. From here, stairs lead up to the city park, which is actually a green hill among the city walls and bastions, with a nice view. People who drive along the seacoast of the Zadar area are accompanied for a long time by an island which seems uninhabited. This is the Kornati National Park, which, besides the main island, constitutes 140 smaller islands. It is precisely the abundance of islands and cliffs that lend the Croatian coast its scenic beauty. This is what the locals must have thought, because, according to a folk tale, after the creation of the earth, God still had a handful of cliffs left. He threw these back over his shoulder, and then he turned to arrange them. When he saw the Kornati Islands, he decided that he could not arrange them any better than this. The islands that belong to the nature reserve can be visited on organized cruises, which include swimming and lunch. Excursions depart from Zadar, Šibenik, and Split. The azure blue sea, the glittering sky, the fabulous landscape, the smiling islands. Even Odysseus, who came wandering here, was much envied for his long vacation. The landscape enchanted many people over the following centuries also. Shakespeare and Shaw, Jack London and Goldoni, Lord Byron and Agatha Christie, Puccini and Imre Kallman, Gabriele D'Annunzio and Edward VIII. In the 20th century, wealthy and famous people started a fashion, and hundreds of thousands of tourists walked in their path. The 1,800-kilometer-long coast of Croatia became the beach of Europe. The Krka National Park became the 7th nature reserve of the country in 1985, which is frequently visited due to its favorable location. Passing through Šibenik Bay, motorboats carrying tourists pass under the bridge of the Adriatic Highway every hour in peak season. The area of the national park is 147 square kilometers, of which the water surface comprises 25 square kilometers. In addition to the rapids and waterfalls, the flora and fauna of the region are extremely rich and interesting. 860 kinds of plants and 222 species of birds live here. Moreover, out of the 18 fish species, 10 can be found only in this place. In Krka, the ruins of a 14th century fortress, churches, monasteries, and watermills can also be found. The recreation area, snack bar, and the souvenir shop were created from an old watermill. On the right side of the river, between the town of Skadrin and the rapids, we can see the remaining parts of the Roman Skadrone plumbing system. The frothing river scooped a deep canyon into the karst. Where more solid rocks blocked its way, the most spectacular parts of the waterfall were formed. The falls of the 7 tufaceous stairs of the Skradini Rapids are 242 meters high altogether. The 17 steps of Skradinsky Buk, created by limestone sedimentation, and its benches overgrown by plants, enchant everyone who sees it. There are some people who walk and take photographs or look around on bridges standing on piles built on the lake. Some people only watch swimmers with envious eyes. The braver, however, can have a swim in the lake or stand under the waterfall cascading down from the height. The depth of the lake can be sometimes up to 20 meters, so it's advisable to swim only in the designated area. The temperature is milder in summer than we would expect in a place like this. The town of Šibenik is not as well known as Dubrovnik, Rijeka, or Split. Therefore, it could bring us the pleasure of discovery, making our journey a more pleasant experience. The medieval houses of the old town, erected from white stones, the narrow lanes, huge sunlit squares, and the uniform, late Gothic atmosphere of ornate buildings raise the town again to the level of Split, Zadar, and Trogir, which were its chief rivals in the Middle Ages. The building of the town hall belongs to the local government as a fine example of historic continuance. Almost every inch of the pillared, balconied building framed by 2 grand staircases is ornamented. The room of the town guard, as well as the pillory, used to be under the staircases. The St. James Cathedral of Šibenik was the main work of the famous local sculptor and architect Juraj Dalmatinac. He was obsessed with working on this building. He put all his money and energy into it. The row of statues depicting 70 human heads commemorates the residents of the city who contributed to the building of the St. James Church. They say that the self-portrait of Dalmatinac is one of these statues, but it cannot be said which one he is. The group is a bright spot on the wall portraying saints. Among the embossments and the statues we can find lions, angels, and Adam and Eve. They try to cover their nudity on the two sides of the entrance. The St. Anna fortress, built by the Venetians, rises 80 meters above the town. A high wall was erected on the land side. From the sea, however, the view is beautiful of Šibenik Bay, St. Anthony Channel, and the estuary of Krka River. The fortress used to function as a line of defense, together with 3 other castles. Primošten looks like an island from the distance, which is of course not accidental, as it was indeed once an island. It was established in the 16th century by Bosnian people who escaped from the Ottomans. The Ottomans disliked boating, therefore the island offered a good shelter from them. After their leaving, the dwellers built a new bridge and an embankment. The bay created this way gives place to a harbor that was used only by fishermen for centuries. However, nowadays it's become ever popular with yacht owners. The small town with its 1,400 inhabitants offers a romantic view, especially from a distance. Recently, Primošten has wanted to become a real art village like Saint-Paul-de-Vence on the French Riviera. Enthusiastic painters and other artists have already been won for this plan. The works of occasional drawers can be seen along the harbor promenade, and works of more prestigious artists in the municipal gallery. However, it's possible that we'll be much more fascinated by the serenity of the little town than any of the pictures. While we're here, we should definitely try the special local wine made from grapes using strip cultivation. In Trogir, shades of the still visible past enchant us. We have to discover the town thoroughly to believe that once it could match Ragusa or even Venice. Trogir was once a peninsula, but the promontory was severed even before Christ. The bridge leading to the old town reaches land at St. Nicholas Nunnery. The famous embossment depicting Kairos, the deity of fortune, was dug out in a yard of a house in Trogir and is exhibited here. The little loggia leans against the town wall, directly behind the monastery. Travelers arriving after the closure of the town gate could sleep in this squatty little building. They probably would have preferred a hotel, although that's difficult to find in peak season even today. The romantic atmosphere of the town can be attributed to the 13th century curving, zigzag streets. Gothic windows, archways, pillared balconies, and inner courtyards decorated with embossments. Trogir, especially in the evening, is a bit like Venice, which is no wonder since it was under the rule of the Winged Lion from 1322. Camerlengo Fortress, situated at the end of the island, began to be built under the aegis of defense against the Venetians. Later, it was finished by them with its current form, zigzag-patterned town walls and corner bastion with breastwork. It's worth seeing the City Hall, the clock tower which was originally made for a church, and the St. Lawrence Cathedral, in which Roman, Gothic, and Renaissance elements melt in harmonic unity. Construction on the cathedral began in the 12th century. The carvings of the main gate praise the work of a local master, while the sepulchre of Bishop Orsini was created by Nicola Fiorentino. The Cipico Palace bears the name of the winning Trogirian captain of the sea battle of Lepanto. When the Tartars raided Europe, Hungarian king Bela IV monitored their preparation from Trogir and offered his daughter Margit to God. The Tartars moved away, and Margit entered the nunnery on the island of Rabbits, which bears her name today. The fortified castles, giving the name to the bay, were built by noblemen who had estates along the coastline. The most famous of them belongs to the Rossani family, and in this chapel, the local Romeo and Juliet have been sleeping the sleep that knows no waking since 1681. Split is a cultural, tourist, commercial, and industrial center, the second biggest city of Croatia. Its central location, mild climate, and unique cultural treasures are a great attraction. In the city, we can see some famous statues by Juraj Dalmatinak and Ivan Mestrovic. The enormous monument depicting Archbishop Gregory holding the Holy Bible in his hand is believed to bring luck if you rub its big toe. The most famous monument of Split is the Diocletian's Palace, which is on the World Heritage List of UNESCO. The city was of no importance during Greek and Roman times. Probably it would have remained so if the native Diocletian, who rose from soldier to emperor, had not chosen the city as the site for his palace. When the 200 by 200 meter group of palaces was erected, neither the town walls nor the houses attached to it existed. Not even the harbor promenade was there, which was the result of later construction. The way to the arched cellar through the bronze gate, between the lane of art galleries and little shops, used to be the sea gate of the palace, the place where the emperor embarked on his galley. There was a gate on every wall of the palace. These were linked by two main roads, Cardo and Decumanus, crossing each other. The tower of St. Duimo Cathedral surpasses the walls of the palace. Its entrance was once guarded by two black granite sphinxes brought from Egypt. Today, only one of them is here. The other one is next to the Temple of Jupiter, and of course on the trade sign of the neighboring terraced cafe. But he has still seen something better. He saw how the Christian church became a Roman mausoleum, and how Venetian palaces were born of ancient marble and old gravestones. This way, it's no wonder that the Sphinx smiles a bit skeptically at the epitaphs of Christian cultures and civilizations. The octagonal mausoleum of Diocletian, that the emperor designated as his final resting place, stands to the right of the church. The revengeful archbishops, however, removed the sarcophagus of the faithless emperor. The 6-storied bell tower was built for centuries and thus reflects different architectural styles, from Roman to Renaissance, on each level. Makarska is a settlement named after the Riviera. It's a holiday resort in a beautiful area. A promenade fringed by palms runs along behind its 1.5-kilometer-long pebbled beach. The Horseshoe Bay of the harbor is protectively embraced by St. Peter and Osijava peninsulas. The high mountain behind the settlement, Biokovo, gives protection to Makarska. The peak, always cloaked in clouds, doesn't let rain clouds through, just like the landmass protecting the French Riviera. St. Mark's Church, from the 18th century, stands on the main square. The building, framed by green, blooming trees, stands on a hill. It is dwarfed by the high mountain in the background, though. Makarska was once the trading center of salt mines in Bosnia-Herzegovina. This activity ensured welfare and jobs for the dwellers of the town for centuries. The place of commerce was gradually taken over by tourism, which today provides most of its income. In peak season, 4 or 5 ferries a day depart from here to the island of Brač. Ferries take people from the neighboring Dubrovnik to Hvar, from Ploč to the Peljasak Peninsula. Nature lovers and mountain climbers may go on pleasant hikes to the Bijakova mountain. At Neum, a 4-kilometer-long seaside lane belongs to Bosnia and Herzegovina. This extremely special landscape, reminiscent of Asian rice paddies, is the estuary of the Neretva. We can see a colorful white-water land enclosed by mountains and hills. This little green area broken by streams is the Moor of Hutovo. Dubrovnik, which was among the first to become part of the World Heritage, is more beautiful than ever. It offers such an experience that despite its isolated location and distance from the larger beaches, it should not be missed. Soon, a new cable railway is going to lead up the 412-meter-high Srd mountain. We can take the best pictures of the old town from here, which was made impregnable by walls as high as 25 meters in some places, 15 towers, and 2 corner fortifications. Walking into the old town, we can understand why Alberto Moravia said that we travel in time, not in space. The atmosphere of the city shoots us back to the past. The first settlers could have been the escaping dwellers of the nearby Epidaurus. They chose the little islands and cliffs that were very difficult to approach, which were linked to each other by filling the narrow strait only centuries later, as a protection against Avars and Slavs. The mountain pass ran along the present-day main street. By the 13th century, the building of town walls was mostly finished, and the picture of the old town that can be seen today was shaped. The settlement was called Raguza at that time, and for a long time, which means the man who lives on the cliff in Latin. The interesting spot of the bell tower of Sponza Palace is the clock symbolizing the sun, its elongated ray showing the exact time. The busiest square, maybe the place that is the biggest attraction, is Pred Dvorom, meeting place of Plaka and the fishing harbor. The martyr, Archbishop St. Blaise, is the patron saint of the city. The church that was named after him was built in 1715. The Orlando Pillar was made by Master Antun Dibrovcan in 1418. Like the medieval Roland pillars, it was a symbol of the independence of the city, though it was used as a pillory too. The sword of the knight functioned as a unit of measurement. 1 Dubrovnik cloth yard was equal to 51.2 centimeters. The artwork of Pietro Martino da Milano is the little Onofrio well, which, decorated with dolphins and gargoyles, spouts water next to the building of the first guard. The main harbor of the city-state was the old one until the appearance of huge steamships, and from the mole we can reach the city through 2 gates. The Gothic gate on the side of the fishing harbor and fish market was erected at the end of the 1300s, and on the side of the mole, a century later, in Renaissance style. The harbor could preserve its former layout till today, its entrance guarded by a long stretching breakwater. Little pleasure boats leave to the island of Lokrum, where we can rent a boat if we're interested in the Blue Cave on the Lapad Peninsula. We should not be surprised that on the wall of the fortress facing the harbor, Saint Blaise gives us a blessing. He has 17 statues in the city altogether. In the center of the square behind Pula Gate stands the 16-angled domed Onofrio fountain by Neapolitan master Onofrio della Cava. The only ornament of the simple building of the Franciscan monastery is the beautiful Pieta above the entrance, made by Leonard Petrovic. The Pila Gate is a round-arched bastion with drawbridges, which were used in the Middle Ages. The bridge was drawn and the gate was closed every night. More Yokai wrote his romantic novel, The Three Marble Heads, about the statue heads above the Renaissance gate. Hvar is not only the longest island of the Adriatic, but also the greenest. On the 300-square-kilometer island, the number of sunny hours is very high. The Venetian fleet once anchored here for winters because on the island there is no frost, even in winter. It's also its pleasant climate and rich vegetation that makes the island popular with tourists. Hiking through the city gate, between ruined palaces, we can reach the fortress built by the Venetians and named Spanish Fortress after Spanish King Charles V. From the towers, the image of the harbor and the nearby islands opens up. The capital city, with the same name as the island, boasts the biggest main square of the Adriatic cities. The square was developed partly on the grounds of the Venetian arsenal. This is where the first modern city theater of Europe was built. The dry land side of the square is framed by palaces of wealthy residents. The St. Stephen's Cathedral rises among them, with a gridded well in front. In the hall of the theater, an exhibition is featured. This is where the figurehead of the Turkish galleon, which was barge-poled in the sea battle of Lepanto, can be seen. The Renaissance loggia building of the city, with a clock tower, in which is currently a bar, is decorated with the winged lion of Venice. The hotels of the island were built in this area. The Franciscan church and monastery, erected as a votive offering by Venetian sea captains who escaped the storm, stands in the harbor. St. Stephen's Church was built on the place of the old church destroyed by Ulugh Ali, the great Algerian pirate leader. From the busy harbor of Hvar ferries, tourist boats and yachts depart to roam the islands, bays, and cities of the Croatian coast, admiring all the beauties and cultural heritage that one of the most visited tourist destinations of Europe has to offer.